Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I was on the field for the full game today. I've never actually been on the surface of the sun, but it was very similar to what I would imagine that experience would be like. I saw something where the field, the temperature on the field at Indiana today was 110 degrees or something like that. It was probably in that neighborhood at Ohio Stadium today, so I'm great. I'm a little dehydrated. How are you?
Well, you were on the field, up in the press box in the front row, just so people know. It's like the ant being burned alive by the magnifying glass, and so I don't think Kevin and I actually got to our seats until, 2:30 or so, because we were trying to survive. So we just stayed in the media area and watched some football, and then knew that eventually we were going to have to take our seats. But with the noon games, and thankfully today was a 3:30 game. With the noon games, you don't really have that luxury. You will fry in there, and your rods and cones really get blasted. So speaking of being blasted, Tom, this defense, Trevion Henderson, a very good game. In Ohio State's 41-20 victory over Tulsa, nearly covered, so I don't know why anybody would be unhappy with the performance.
It's such a strange team. I really do not understand this team. You have all of this talent. You have what should be a good coaching staff, and there's just like every week there's like a weird personnel thing where it's just like, oh yeah, this guy's not playing. Why? Life is a mystery. Who's to say? And every week you have just one unit that just sort of decides like, we're going to take the week off. We're just, what if we didn't? Like that's just like the what if we didn't unit of the week. And like they're winning and they're 2-1 and they, beat a pretty good Tulsa team, but they didn't win real emphatically. And it wasn't, for the second straight year, this team is not putting games out of reach enough that you can play the backups a lot, which then sort of snowballs into, well, then the backups haven't played. So then when you need the backups to play, they haven't played. So therefore, it exacerbates issues down the line. And I look at this team and I just kind of go, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it.
It's a wholly unsatisfactory feeling, like watching how they do it. The crowd, the smallest crowd at Ohio Stadium in many, many decades, possibly 100 years.
That's not true. There were games with like 600 people last year, so false.
Outside of COVID, there was 74,500 and
something like that
at this game, and that number was shocking. It wasn't shocking when you looked in the stadium and you saw tons of empty seats. I didn't think there were nearly 30,000 empty seats just looking at it.
No, I looked around the stadium and I thought, yeah, this is going to be high 80s, something like that. Because it was like the corners of south stands were empty. The north end of C deck was empty, but it was pretty full other places. But yeah, I would not have gotten within 15,000 on a guess. And of course, if that crowd had shown up at Michigan, it would have been 100,003 people. But yeah, I mean, it was. I guess credit to Ohio State for honestly announcing the attendance.
Yeah.
But like, it's just, everything just feels off this year. This reminds me a little bit of 2015, where it's just kind of like the whole is so much less than the sum of the parts, and I just haven't quite been able to put my finger on why yet.
Well, then you start to question the parts. Like, are they that good when you see some of the young guys playing well and the veterans not? At this point, I don't know. Maybe the sum is equal to the parts, because you're not getting as much from those parts as you should. The defensive line, where's the pressure on the quarterback? The veteran linebackers that you came into this season with, where's the production there? Obviously, Taraji Mitchell was held out today, so that explains some of that. Seven Banks finally got to play, but he wasn't playing, and Ryan Day is talking as if it wasn't just injuries that kept him out. Saying he's practicing well. He's
Practicing better, yeah.
Yes, practicing better and basically earning time now. And a lot of the senior guys and the senior leaders and the upperclassmen in the secondary aren't really playing. Marcus Williamson got quite a bit of time today, but really Dave kept calling the team like really, really young, and this is a young team, and there's youth because the seniors, the upperclassmen, really haven't stepped up as much as they need to, and you've got a bunch of super seniors as well. So it's not really young, but you have to rely on so many young guys because they're the ones that are actually making plays.
And I think of all the conclusions I drew today, there need to be different people out there. Like, this may be like, you look at this team right now, and it's very clearly not anywhere close to a level where they can reach any of the goals that they want to reach. Now, it's also, September 17th or whatever, 18th, whatever it is. So you got some time, you got a few more weeks, but it just kind of feels like the second time you lose a game, at that point, you just kind of scrap it and you play all the kids. It almost feels like you spent the first half of the game wondering how many Mississippis are they counting before they rush the passer, because they're not only not getting there, they're not getting close to getting there. And you've got veteran guys. I mean, there are veteran defensive ends out there, and if they're not getting there, they're not getting there. I mean, the most impressive defensive end rushing the passer today to me was JT Tuimoloau. The most impressive defensive tackle rushing the passer to me today was, maybe Haskell Garrett, but maybe Tyleik Williams. So maybe this needs to be a meritocracy, and everyone loves Tyreek Smith, but Tyreek Smith, is not getting there, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste is not getting there, and it feels like maybe you need to play the guys who are starting to make the plays. And, there's a bunch of, yes, it was a lot of Tyleik Williams was in the second half, which is when, before the game, we talked about, hey, this offensive line is going to wear down. So, yeah, maybe that's part of it. But let's see Tyleik Williams in the first half and see, because maybe that's not it.
54 pass attempts, 2 sacks, both by nose tackles.
Yeah.
With Tyleik Williams and Antoine Jackson. So, at this point, and granted, yes, Tyreek Smith is getting held quite a bit. He was getting closer today to getting the quarterback. You really don't see much from Javonte Jean-Baptiste. You don't really see his number getting near the quarterback. And at this point, I think we need to see more JT Tuimoloau. I don't, Jack Sawyer, whatever. If you want to play him more, you go ahead. He's not really done anything yet, but at this point, he's got a higher ceiling than anybody else that is already playing and not producing. So I'm not saying this is like 2004, where it's like, all right, we're going with Troy Smith, we're going with Anthony Gonzalez, we're going with all of these young guys, we're going with Antonio Pittman now.
Yeah.
Because this is a better team than 2004, and it's a better situation
Oh, yeah,
still.
substantially.
And gosh, that was only 17 years ago that I'm dropping in a reference. That feels like it was just yesterday that everybody would understand. But it's, if the freshmen are going to be the ones, and I think Tyleik Williams played well enough. It wasn't just a sack where he showed up; he was getting some pressure. I think I wonder how much of him. I'll have to go ahead and rewatch the game. How much of him playing helps with the run defense as well, and it keeps Trevion Henderson and Haskell Garrett where they should be. And you've got to find ways to get plays made, and you don't have to rely heavily on freshmen on defense. But if you can find them in the right spots, they're relying heavily on Denzel Burke, who had an incredible interception today. We all saw that, Tom. We all saw Denzel Burke get that interception.
Yeah, but then it got overturned by replay, which was too bad, but it did get overturned by replay, which, if I recall correctly, that was one of your bold predictions for this week, was that Denzel Burke would have an interception. So that must have been particularly heartbreaking for you. But, of course, as we saw, it was overturned, so unfortunately it was not an interception.
But the call on the field was interception. And for me, Tom, the call stands. So let's talk about this Ohio State offense. We'll go through the Ohio State defense, because I want to get into C.J. Stroud, because there's a lot to talk about there. It was not great. Some would argue he was not good, but he was 15 of 25, 185 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He started out throwing high again. It's an amazing thing.
It's the same thing every week.
And he never really found his groove. He usually finds a groove somewhere, and then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that he started out throwing high because he's hit his last 7 passes or whatever. But that didn't happen here. And his shoulder is obviously an issue, and it continues to be an issue. You wonder, is it one of those things where, you need him to not throw the ball for a couple of weeks just to rest his shoulder, because it's not getting better when he's continuing to, roll it, and then you have what happened at the end of the half.
Right, and I asked Ryan Day about that after the game because that was such bizarre to me. You get was it a turnover and they ended up with the ball, or they got a punt back? I think it was a turnover. It was an interception or something.
I wasn't watching.
Pretty sure it was an interception. Right before the half, they get the ball on their own 46, 48, something like that. Like 4 or 6 seconds left in the clock. Like, you have time to throw one down in the end zone. This is not on your own 25. This is basically midfield. And they took a knee instead. And it was like, why? Why would you take a knee there? You've got an opportunity to score a touchdown there. Throw one down there. Let your receivers try and make a play. You have better players than Tulsa does. Let them try to make a play. Because what was the score at that point? 13-6 or something like that? So go ahead, try and score a touchdown there. Maybe make it 20-6, and then weren't they getting the ball at the end of the start?
Tulsa was.
Tulsa was. Okay, so then they don't have the ball with a chance to tie to start the second half. Like that seems like a no-brainer to me. And I asked Ryan Day, why did you not opt to do that? And he said, well, if we were in plus territory, I would have, but it's on the 46, 48, whatever it was, 54, 52-yard pass. It takes time for that to develop, and you can have a disaster there if you do that. Which, I mean, okay, but what are the odds that you throw it and it gets into it turns into a touchdown? 5-10%. What are the odds that you have a disaster strip sack, scoop and score the other direction? Substantially less than 5-10%, right? I mean, that seems like a risk worth taking to me. Now, the question is that a function of C.J. Stroud's shoulder not being able to throw the ball 56 yards like he would need to there? If it is, you have other quarterbacks in the team. That is a thing that Ryan Day actually is aware of, because he has recruited all of them, spends a good bit of time with them. You can either put in another guy. I'm quite certain Kyle McCord can throw a football 56 yards. I'm quite certain of that fact. You can put in a guy for that play. You could also put in a guy for all of the plays and let the guy whose shoulder is hurt, who said after the game, I'm going to pull up the exact quote because it was humdinger. It was, it hurts, but life hurts. That's C.J. Stroud on C.J. Stroud's right shoulder. Tony, I mean, life does hurt at times. I think we can all agree on that, but your shoulder doesn't have to hurt at all time. That's not a normal thing. And yes, it's this. This is a baseball pitcher who everyone's arm hurts halfway through the season because it's not a natural thing. And yes, C.J. Stroud has gotten hit. And yes, so okay, but this has been going on for 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks of him doing the chicken wing thing with his arm every time there's an incompletion. It's been 3 weeks of throws getting sailed at the beginning of the game, and it's like at some point this is a pattern you can't ignore. And you know what helps injuries sometimes? Rest. Maybe I know C.J. Stroud needs reps, but your other quarterbacks will need reps at some point. You're playing a absolute dumpster fire of a team in Akron next week. Give C.J. Stroud the week off, like the whole week off. Just tell him today, hey, listen, we're not going to play you next week. Kyle McCord, you're taking the snaps of the ones all week. You're playing next week. And that does not mean that Kyle McCord is a new starter. It just means you're playing 1 week. And see how it goes. And you wonder if that's a political thing that you don't want even the perception. It's a confidence thing. It just seems so screamingly obvious that it's bizarre to me that it hasn't happened yet.
And the thing is, they could do it, not announce it, and because that's what has happened with somebody every single game this week. He's not playing. Like, why didn't C.J. Stroud play? No, just whatever. I mean, and you don't have to tell anybody. You just go ahead and do it, but. I don't see the shoulder getting better. I mean, it's been this way since the outset, and C.J. Stroud is saying, well, at this point, no, who's really 100%? It's like, well, it's only week 3. Last week was week 2, and you were still having shoulder issues after week 1. So it's
right.
This isn't November.
Right.
This is September. I don't even know if his shoulder is still going to be there in November unless you do something now to help him. And if you give him the week off and the shoulder is still bad, maybe there's something more there. And obviously they're doing all. If there's an MRI that needs to be done at Ohio State, they can do that, and they've got all kinds of doctors, and I'm sure it's more hurt than injury type of thing, and it's just pain management. But it's clear that even if it is pain management, if it's not being managed well.
Yeah, it's just this is the same issue over and over again, and if it's just pain management but it's not impacting his play on the field, then that's it's up to the player, and you have certain guys who are just they're not going to come off the field even if you have a gun to their head. They will never choose to come off the field. This sure feels like it's impacting his play on the field, because we have seen CJ Stroud in spring ball and a little bit last year, and he is not throwing the way he is capable of throwing, which means his shoulder is compromised. He has essentially said his shoulder is compromised. You can see him moving his shoulder during the game because his shoulder is compromised. The way he's throwing the ball means his shoulder is compromised. How is this a conversation? I literally do not understand how this is a conversation.
My thought is Ryan Day talks about tough love, and I think this is maybe his way of toughening up the quarterback for the rest of the season. And but that's something where those two guys know each other a lot better than anybody else knows them. So, I'm sure they're having conversations. Stroud kept saying, "I'm well enough to play. I'm not hurt so much that I can't play," and it's true because he keeps playing.
Right.
But at some point, where are the diminishing returns from that?
Is it in his best interest to play?
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not asking that question because I'm telling you that I know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm asking, is it in his best interest to play? Because he does not look comfortable on the field at times. It does not look like he's performing to the level he's capable of performing. Would it not be in his best interest to take a week off? And you could have taken a week off before this week, but, I mean, you definitely can take a week off this coming week, because I feel like if you gave me a real crash course in the Ohio State offense, I could probably go out there, hand the ball to Trevion Henderson 30 times, and, it wouldn't be pretty, and Ohio State would not cover the spread, but Ohio State would probably still beat Akron, because Akron is still Akron, and I can only screw up so much.
One last thing on C.J. Stroud. I know a lot of people are going to be saying that he's not running the ball because of his shoulder, and he's not keeping it on reads, and I'm just telling you, those aren't reads.
No, they're definitely not reads.
Same thing with Dwayne Haskins. They're not reads, or else he would keep some of them. When you see a wide open running lane for him, or boy, why he sure made a mistake by not keeping that one. Those aren't reads. I mean, he's good enough to be able to read that. The coaches are good enough to be able to correct him on that. So just assume those are handoffs.
Let's rephrase the statement there, and then you tell me true or false. It's not that he's not keeping it on reads because of his shoulder. Are they not calling reads because of his shoulder? There's a question mark on the end of that sentence. Your answer?
That's a good question. See, even answering that is a good question. I use a question mark. So, yeah, at this point you have to wonder that. And so maybe that's where we just leave that, because we do need to talk about Trevion Henderson, who this is his job now. This is his team now.
Yeah.
Of the guys on offense, of the guys on this team, he is the one that can carry them wherever they're going to go, and he could take them further than anybody else. I don't know how far that is. It may only be to Jacksonville and a Gator Bowl.
It's further than Jacksonville and the Gator Bowl.
Jacksonville's very nice. That's a lie.
Tony's never been to Jacksonville, apparently.
I've driven through it.
The absolute floor for this team is probably, 8-4? I mean, absolute floor. The roof falls in. 8-4. So that's a Citrus Bowl kind of season. Realistically, this is a 9-3, 10-2 team. And if things get together, this is still a team that all of its opportunities are still ahead of it. This team very well could go 11-1, win the Big Ten, make the college football playoff. That is still a possibility. But there's a lot of stuff that has to happen between here and there in order to make that a real possibility.
But he is really, really good. Set the Ohio State freshman rushing record with 277 yards on 24 carries. The amazing thing about that, Tom, his first carry could have gone for about 86 yards, and it went for like 10 because he got tripped up, and there was nobody behind him. He was going to go the distance on that one. So
he would have, if he had done that, he would have set the Ohio State, not just the Ohio State freshman rushing record, the Ohio State rushing record, because Trey Sermon had, 331 last year against 34? 331?
332,
Yeah.
331.
330 and some change against Northwestern last year.
Like
And
1,000 feet of
it was. I remember the old record. The old record was Eddie George. That was. I only bother learning records once they've been around for like 10, 15 years.
You've got to play at least 9 games.
Yeah, I'm old school like that. Yeah, he was incredible, and it was at a number of times it was like, boy, it's fortunate for Ohio State that Trey Henderson is doing this because no one else is doing anything. It just everything just looks out of sync right now on the offense. Just and stuff that's wildly out of character. Chris Olave dropped a pass. I think this is 2 weeks in a row Chris Olave has dropped a pass. Chris Olave never drops passes. That's crazy. And it was this was not like last week there were some tough catches, and it was Jeremy Ruckert had one, and there was a defender right there who knocked it out of his hands. Last week Olave had one that was kind of like that. Tough catch, defender knocked it out of his hands. This week was just, it was a little high, but like this is a ball Chris Olave catches 100 times out of 100, and then he didn't catch it.
It looked like he was batting it down with both hands. Like he was trying to prevent a Hail Mary in the end zone from being caught. This is his he went catchless. First time since October 5th of 2019 that Chris Olave didn't have a catch, which is pretty crazy. The watching Trevion Henderson, just to finish up with him, Day kept talking about he gets to the second level and then he can hit the home run from there. Ohio State has running backs that can get to the second level, but when they get there, one is either going to get tackled or one is going to maybe make a guy miss, but maybe get caught from behind. Trevion Henderson is setting guys up. I said it comes natural. He doesn't like to do too much thinking. And when you do too much thinking, you're slow about it, and he's not slow about any of that. And man, he's really, really good. Tom, over under on a number of 200-yard rushing games remaining for Trevion Henderson this year. If I go 0.5, you're going to go over, so I'm going to have to go 1.5, Tom.
I'll go under that. I mean, you do still have Mayan Williams, who is he is on the team. Yes. I saw him on the bench.
And we could talk about him after this.
Yeah, you have other running backs. I think he's going to probably have one more. He might have two more. And you look at him, you go with all the stuff we were hearing during fall camp, all the stuff we were seeing when we were in practice during fall camp, and it was like, this is all in there. And this is, go back to August. Go back to literally any August show, and we are telling you all of the things that you just saw on the field on Saturday. It's all in there. It feels like this is an offense that's sort of looking for. I mean, Ryan Day talks about what are you going to hang your hat on? Can they hang their hat on the passing game right now? I mean, they did last week, but it was like a half against Minnesota, decently against Oregon. Like they piled up a ton of yards, but not in the red zone. It feels like they could hang their hat on Trevion Henderson and ride him for a pretty good season.
He is their most consistent player on offense. I would argue Denzel Burke is the most consistent player on defense. And they're both true freshmen. Mayan Williams was healthy, was just basically didn't get in. Ryan Day said they went with the hot hand. There was one situation, there was like a little short yardage situation they kept Master in and allowed him to get some carries. We suggested maybe Master Teague would get in there some today, and then they just stayed with Trevion Henderson. And really, why wouldn't you? But Mayan Williams, he'll be back. That's a tough break that you don't even get in. You were the starter for 2 games, but if Trevion's even, he's leaving, and Mayan didn't get Wally pipped, but at this point, this is like when Trey Sermon finally overtook Master Teague, because it took him a long time to do it, and then once he did, okay, that was it. And it was his job, and then, of course, he got hurt. But anything else from the offense you want to touch on?
I think that was pretty much it. It's just the Mayan Williams thing. It's like the Seven Banks thing. It's so weird to me. something is just off right now, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's just something about it is just not quite right. Just very strange.
We were all quick on the defense, and then we can start taking some questions. Just the young guys stepping up. You saw Cam Martinez at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming down the stairs to the field, and I saw the interception, and I didn't know who it was, but boy, was I hoping it was Denzel Burke. And when I saw that it wasn't, I was very, very angry and very disappointed. And but good to see him revert to his quarterback ways and take it to the house. And you saw his teammates blocking for him, and he was very happy after the game. And he had a really good game. They used him pretty well as that nickel guy, and I think we're just going to continue to see more of him. Continue to see more of all of the young guys on defense, because it's their time. The other guys have had their opportunities last year, this year, in practice, and at this point, like you said, feelings go out. You can't worry about feelings. You got to worry about wins and losses. And when you're having to a one-score game in the fourth quarter against Tulsa, and like Tulsa at one point, did they have the ball where they could have tied it in the fourth quarter?
I think that's right. Yes.
So that's a wake-up call. Not that you needed. Yeah. They're getting wake-up calls every morning at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's touch on Cam Martinez first. You have to feel so good for Cam Martinez. Cam Martinez was an option quarterback at a Muskegon, Michigan. I think he was, the Mr. Michigan Gatorade Player of the Year. He very famously in high school had a highlight tape that was 10 minutes long that was just touchdowns. It was just Cam Martinez, touchdowns only. And it was just 10 minutes of him scoring touchdowns, because he was just this incredible athlete who was just way, 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 way too good for mid-sized Michigan high schools. He, on that play, you saw him with the ball in his hands, and it's Ohio State needs to find ways to get him the ball in his hands, because when he gets the ball in his hands, he knows what to do with it. And they have a very simple formula with every time you see an Ohio State player get an interception, they try and get to the sideline, because then you don't have to worry about guys coming up behind you, and the teammates have to block one way. So it's you pick it off, get to the sideline, take it up the sideline. He knows what to do with the ball in his hands. That was a pretty long interception return, so he now has about a 40-second or so touchdowns only highlight reel in college, so good for him. That's a good start. But he's someone who, even when we were talking about guys in the summer and in the spring, sometimes I would forget Cam Martinez as we're going through the defensive backs, because it's he wasn't one of the true freshmen who you sort of saw last year. He came in, he was an offensive player in high school. They moved him to defense, so there's just going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and he just kind of fell off the radar a little bit. And then all of a sudden, he was out there. I texted you guys, hey, Cam Martinez is in, because that was notable. That was noteworthy. Hey, Cam Martinez is in now. This is something new that they're trying. And then by the end of the game, hey, we're talking to Cam Martinez because Cam Martinez has just run back a touchdown.
It was funny. Ronnie Hickman had his helmet knocked off for a play, so Court Williams goes running in, and then they sent Cameron Martinez in for him. So Court Williams went in and then had to come out before the play began. But they were really trusting Cam Martinez. Bryson Shaw started to get a free safety. Before the game, Ryan Watts was working as the number 2 free safety. Did not really, I don't think he ever got into the game. No Legend Cavazos either, and he was not on the availability report. So another one of those, this guy just randomly doesn't play, and it's I don't know, it's getting to be a habit. I don't know how much we want to look into it, but it's interesting. Do we want to go to questions now?
Sure, I'm going to hand.
All right, I'm here on the mic. We got our guys back on the shot. All right, I promised Terry we would get to his question. Do you believe Ryan Day is simply over-coddling Stroud?
Tom, do you believe that Ryan Day is over-coddling C.J. Stroud, or even just coddling him?
I think it's the opposite. If you're coddling him, then you're not playing him. You're protecting him. You're putting him in bubble wrap. This is very much the opposite. You're playing him when he's, come out and said yeah, my shoulder's hurt. Yeah, it hurts. And you're playing him and you're playing him, and no other quarterback has taken a snap this year. So I would say it's the opposite of coddling him.
Is it coddling him to keep playing him and not letting anybody else play so his feelings don't get hurt? Is that what we're talking about here, where you're protecting him that way so that nobody else can come in and take the job?
Well, is it that, or is it that they have, in their perception, there's such a gap between C.J. Stroud and the other two quarterbacks that even, C.J. Stroud at 75% is better than the other two quarterbacks. Is that their perception? Because, it was not a surprise at all that C.J. Stroud won the job. We have talked about C.J. Stroud being the guy who is going to win this job in the fall of 2021 for like 18 months now. So that at least makes that a question to me. That is this, they just believe the gap is so big. But, I think you may find out next week, because they may, if they sit him, then it really is, okay, the Tulsa game was conceivably losable, the Akron game is not, so now you're going to, you're going to put in Kyle McCord and just say, okay, take the week off. If not, then you do kind of start to wonder what the motivation is to keep playing him in that situation.
I do think they view it as a pretty sizable gap, but I also think they will also look into giving him some rest, because it will get worse before it gets better, unless you let it get better now.
Well, and if it does get worse, then you're getting into, this is the easy part of the schedule right now. If it gets worse, and then in mid-October it becomes a real problem where he can't play anymore, then not only do you have the backup who you feel is not as good, but also you have a backup who you feel is not as good, who also has little to no experience. That just exacerbates the problem, and at that point, then the floor falls out of the ceiling or out of the season, and at that point, it's like, okay, now something less than 8-4 is potentially in play.
Our good friend El Suzabo says, never has a win felt so much like a loss.
Yes, never has a win felt so much like a loss. We've been saying it the entire show. It does not feel. There's just something missing. It's not a fulfilling thing. It's not. It's just the entire afternoon just felt kind of off, kind of odd. Then you see that the crowd wasn't what it was, 75,000. There was no emotion. It seemed like it was just going through the motions type of thing, where kind of maybe like the first scrimmage of the year. I don't know. It was all very odd, very unfulfilling, and really not a lot of great things to say. And that touchdown at the end makes it look a lot better than it was to cover over some stuff. But the good thing is the defense is no longer a secret, so you really can't cover over any of it.
This was one of those games that looks very different if you sit down and watch the game all 4 hours and 45 minutes or whatever it was. That third quarter was like a presidential administration and a half, that third quarter. If you watch this game, you come away with one thought about it. I'm guessing if you watch the halftime show on whatever the primetime game is tonight, you're going to see Trevion Henderson running for 1,000,000 yards, and you're going to see Cam Martinez with a pick six, and you're going to see Ohio State wins against a pretty good team by 3 touchdowns. Like, wow, okay, they've got it back on track. It's like, well, as long as you don't get too far down into the details, yes, that's true. But I think you had to have somewhat realistic expectations on, okay, if the defense is better, how much better is the defense going to be? This is not going to get fixed overnight. They gave up a metric crap load of passing yards, but they controlled the run pretty. So is that progress? Does that represent progress? Because they got gashed on the run last week. Now, against not quite as good a team, they did. They gave up 2.6 yards per carry or something like that. Like that's a really good outing. But then they gave up 400 yards passing. So it's just there were. And last week they threw the ball all over the place, but they couldn't run. This week, ran the ball all over the place, but they couldn't really throw. It's like it was a very one step forward, one step back kind of game, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think the measuring stick I had was sustained drives and how many of them they had. I know they had a bunch of passing yards. I don't know, offhand what the drives were like, because we don't get stuff printed out for us anymore. I'm not complaining, but
I can tell you.
I don't think they had a bunch, but
first 2 drives, microphone goes towards me.
Oh, sorry.
First 2 drives, 16 plays, 81 yards, 14 plays, 62 yards. And at that point, I'm going, oh boy, this is real bad. And then after that, 4 plays, 3 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, 8 plays, but only 19 yards, 5 plays, 5 plays, 6 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown, 7 plays, 22 yards, 4 plays, 5 plays. So the first 2 drives were 16 and 14 plays. And, at that point, everyone has kind of made up their mind that this is not any better. And then it got better. And they had only given up 6 points at that point, because Philip Montgomery doesn't understand that when you are at a severe talent deficit, you have to capitalize on your rare opportunities. Holy smokes. Stop kicking field goals when you're stop playing like you're trying to cover the spread. Play to win the game. What? I can't imagine the inspiring pregame speech before this game. Like, oh, we're going to come in there. We're going to show them they're favored by 25. We're going to lose by 21. We're going to cover for Golden Hurricane Nation. They've got their money on you, and we're going to cash. Not for the people at the money line. We're not even going to try for that. We're just going to kick field goals, and we're going to keep it close. Let's go get them. Woo!
Yeah, Kevin, what's up?
I was going to say, let's go a little speed round here with some quick hitters.
Sure.
Caleb asks, do you think Ohio State will be in the top 4 at the end of the season?
Will Ohio State be in the top 4 at the end of the season? Tom, I'll turn this one over to you. Speed round.
No.
You said that very slowly, but at this point, you have no choice but to agree. Like you said, everything is still available, but we need to see it. And they did get better on defense. Day said the in-game adjustments were much better, as Matt Barnes called the plays. Kerry Combs was upstairs with them as well.
Okay, we have Parker saying, is Day starting to become the problem if he's not going to play the best players?
Is Day starting to become the problem if he's not going to play the best players? Tom, did you see Trevion Henderson out there today? He was the best player on the team. I get a little I don't always agree with this assessment, because you see that they will play the best players. I want to know, like, who are you referring to? Who should is this a Tommy Eichenberg thing? Who is behind him? Because this linebacker group is incredibly thin. Dallas can't hardly get on the field, which tells you a lot there. He's a senior and he's not playing much. I don't know. It's not a it's not they're holding Kyle McCord back because they're coddling C.J. Stroud. They're playing who will help them. They're not in a position right now to be picky and to be choosy. They need production.
Yeah, and you're seeing them play people. It's not like the freshmen aren't playing. I'm going to be interested to see now, okay, Tyleik Williams had a monster game. Tyleik Williams played more this week than he did last week, but he played last week. They played a true freshman nose tackle against Oregon. That means something. Then they played more this week. I think there's a possibility Tyleik Williams is maybe the most snaps at nose next week against Akron. I mean, they're playing a true freshman cornerback. He started game 1. I mean, Trevion Henderson, game 1, had, he didn't play that much, but he had a long touchdown. He had a couple carries. They're not holding guys out at this point. I think they're just sort of trying to figure out, like, okay, the goal is always play the best 11. Right now, I think they're still kind of going like, so who are the best 11?
I know you guys touched upon this earlier, but just for people who got in late, Kay Simon asking, where was Mayan Williams?
Yeah, where was Mayan Williams? Just to touch back on that, circle back. He was available. They just didn't go to him because they went with Trevion Henderson. Obviously, was told before the game that he was going to get to start. They got Master Teague in there a little bit, but then there's just never an opportunity for Mayan Williams to get back in there because, as Ryan Day said, they were riding the hot hand of Trevion Henderson. And when you look at, 12 yards a carry or 11 yards a carry with 24 attempts, they made the right decision. I was standing near Mayan Williams when Cameron Martinez was returning his interception, and it's like, I don't want to say he wasn't thrilled. I mean, he was fine because we've all seen Mayan Williams. It's not like he's like the smilingest guy, and he's kind of a cool demeanor. But that's just another odd one where you couldn't find even a carry for him.
We're going to do three more. Diego saying, how much of this is OSU and how much of it is just, it's clearly a weird year in college football?
Yeah, how much of this is Ohio State versus how much is just a weird year in college football, Tom? Take it.
Yeah, this is a weird year in college football. I tweeted that out at one point. Like, you look at Clemson barely scraping by past Georgia Tech, who lost to Northern Illinois, who lost to Michigan by, like, you need scientific notation to explain.
A million.
Yeah, I mean, you need scientific notation to explain how much Northern Illinois lost to Michigan by today. So it is starting to feel like a year when, I mean, Alabama barely scraped by Florida, and Florida's a good team, but they're not incredible.
Alabama started at 21-3.
Yeah, and then you have to finish the full game. That's actually part of the rules, and they won by 2 points. And it feels like, I mean, if you want to give Alabama the credit for being a complete team, okay, we'll give Alabama credit for being a complete team. There are 129 of those teams in FBS. I don't know that there are any other complete teams. I mean, Oklahoma looked like crap against Nebraska today. Oklahoma looked like crap against Tulane in week 1. This is the second week in a row second week in 2 and 3 that Clemson has looked terrible.
Notre Dame did not look great.
Notre Dame, I didn't see Notre Dame's game today, but Notre Dame had looked bad last week. I mean, it's just, you just look around, and I think part of it is you have the super senior year. Like, all these teams, Tulsa has so many more players back. Tulsa had 10 guys who were all conference on their team this week. That's not normal. All these teams have all these extra players back, because Ohio State, while the Ohio State's seniors were all leaving for the NFL, Tulsa's are all coming back for another year. And all the other teams are like Tulsa right now. So that's sort of compressing, I feel like, what had been a real stratified thing, where the top 5 in the sport had separated so much from everyone else. Now those teams all lost all those players, and all, the bottom 125 didn't. So you're kind of getting a compression, and this is not a 2007 season yet, but it sort of has a little bit of that vibe where it's just like, you might see like Cincinnati beat Indiana today. You might see some wild, like, Cincinnati's in the first college football playoff rankings in the top 4. Like, I am just about ready to say I expect that. All they got to do is beat Notre Dame next week, and they're basically there. Then they have to just avoid getting a shocking upset.
Tulsa will beat them in the AAC championship game.
Could be.
All right, a bonus question. Kevin Noon asked, why doesn't Tom Moore understand rapid fire, quick questions?
Well, ask questions that can be answered rapidly. Don't
7 plus 6.
Don't ask big picture college football questions, because then I have to answer big picture college football questions. Fire more rapidly, Mr. Noon.
Well, unfortunately, this one's going to probably take a little bit here. Pavlos asks, love to get your thoughts on the team's culture. Any vibe? Saw today Tyreek and Teron did not stay for Carmen, Ohio. Haskell tried to get them to stay, but they did not. Saw same last week with some players.
Wow. Culture issues. A couple of players didn't stick around for Carmen, Ohio. I've seen that. I saw that some of that happened last week as well. Yeah, that's a little disappointing. But I know in the heat of the game and everything, it's your mood is what it is. But we've also seen them for years since Jim Tressel started this. You sing win or lose. You're there. But does that just continue on with what we're saying about the vibe today? And it's not just today. Obviously, the loss has taken a lot out of people. But are we seeing it also in the players? I would say yes. I think you're seeing some of that in the players. Is that the older players who are like, you know what? I'm not that I'm done, but now I know, like, we have to play perfectly, and we can't because we're not as good as we thought we were. Is there anybody giving up? I don't think that's the case yet. But you can see, like, you would understand why why players would be discouraged right now. The fans are discouraged, so why wouldn't there be some of that from players? Is that a culture issue? I think it's something that culture needs to fix and keep that out of it.
Well, and you got to also remember, these are guys who are, when they're on campus, are hearing from other students, what the heck is wrong with you guys? Why do you guys stink? What's wrong with your coaching staff? They need to fire the coaches who recruited you and who you've spent the last couple of years around. Like, I mean, that's going to grind on you a little bit. These guys had a tough week. Like, I think that's got to be a part of it. And it's not great. It is not, strictly speaking, what you want. I don't know that you're necessarily pushing the panic button on that stuff yet, but it does feel like you need someone to really step up and really be a leader. But I mean, Zach Harrison didn't play today. He's one of the captains. Cam Babb is one of the captains. He's not playing at all this year. I mean, you have guys who, Chris Olave is a captain, right? He didn't have a great game today. I mean, just when your quarterback's not a captain, that's always a little bit of a question. And C.J. Stroud is, I think, going through probably a little bit of his own confidence stuff right now. So he can't necessarily lead everyone else out of it if he's still kind of working through that himself.
I think there's also the access that that fans have to players and the negative feedback that the players constantly get. C.J. Stroud was nearly set a record last week, and he talked about this week how he knows people are talking bad about him, like fans are criticizing him. I don't know if I would do anything different. The defensive players who skipped Carmen, Ohio, all week, their defense has been getting slammed. Coaches have been getting slammed. Do you expect me to stand in front of the fans that are tearing me apart and sing for them? No.
I mean, on the other hand, there weren't that many fans there at the end, so that's something, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you got to remember these are humans, and not just humans. These are 18 to 23-year-old humans who are probably not completely fully formed, mature adults in some ways. I mean, that is one of the things, I mean, that leads to college football being wildly unpredictable is from week to week, you get wildly unpredictable results because you have 18 to 23-year-old guys playing this game. You're not necessarily going to have the 34-year-old NHL captain in the locker room, standing up and speaking to the media, win or lose. That's not who these guys are. They will get there eventually, but I mean, think back to when you were in college. Think back to when I was in college. Think back to when you, dear listener, were in college. Like, if you constantly were walking around campus and having people tell you stink, and that they hope someone else plays ahead of you or whatever. Like, I hope you don't play next week. Like, that's gonna grind on you. Like that's only fair that you hope that now if you get a little more success, stuff kind of gets back on track a little bit.
All right, I got one more. And there have been a lot of great questions that have come in at the end. I apologize to people we don't get it to. I'm going to make an audible here and ask Noah Kane. I don't believe it's the Noah Kane playing for Penn State right now, who has 12 carries for 38 yards, 21-10 Penn State over Auburn right now. How do you think Seven Banks performed today?
Tom, how do you think Seven Banks performed today? I give him credit for finally getting onto the field. I don't think he was. And I know I just asked you how he performed, and I'm going to start to answer the question, but I didn't see any issues. I thought he was fine. He was staying in the game at times. They were rotating three: Cam Brown, Seven Banks, and Denzel Burke. So he was playing well enough to stick in the rotation.
The Ohio State defense is better if Seven Banks is in the rotation, unquestionably. Like, Cam Brown and Denzel Burke have been real pleasant surprises for this team. They need that third guy, Legend Cavazos, Ryan Watts. I mean, they're rotating a bunch of guys through. No one has really seized that third job. If Seven Banks can do that, that's a huge win for Ohio State. He didn't play right away. He was not out on the field right away. And when he came in later, you kind of noticed him. It was like, oh, look, it's Seven Banks. How about that? He's still here. Good for him. But yeah, if they can get him in that rotation, just get more snaps, more good play out of him, he's going to be, I mean, you've seen people talk about him as a first-round NFL draft pick, and like that's a million miles away right now. But if they can get a good, solid season out of him, that goes a long way to solving what was going into the season the biggest question of this defense.
I agree. Is that it? Are we good?
Well, we're sitting at 48 minutes. We've had upwards of 500 people joining us concurrently, so it's been a good show. But I think we wrap it up. Okay.
All right. We will wrap it up then. Want to thank all of you for joining us here on your Saturday night after watching an exciting Ohio State victory over a mighty Tulsa Golden Hurricane team. Again, Ohio State wins at 41-20. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening as you consume this podcast later on. Reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you are not yet a member, now is the perfect time for you to become one, and we certainly invite you to do that. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, which you are right now, go ahead and hit that bell, subscribe, get notified when any of us here at Buckeye Scoop go live. And we've got the streaming of the interview sessions after the games. All of the podcasts end up on YouTube. So all of that good stuff. Subscribe, you'll get notified. I want to thank you guys, and we will talk to you later.